Hi there and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today for our daily scripture study. Chapter by chapter, we're working our way through the Book of Mormon, this time working backwards. We began in Moroni and we're working forward to First Nephi, and right now we're on Third Nephi chapter 22. And with no further ado, let's get started, shall we? The Book of Mormon, 3rd Nephi, chapter 22. Compare Isaiah 54. And then shall that which is written come to pass. Sing, O barren, that thou didst not bear. Break forth into singing, and cry aloud, thou that didst not travail with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thy habitations. Spare not, lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither be thou confounded, for thou shalt not be put to shame. For thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shalt not remember the reproach of thy youth, and shalt not remember the reproach of thy widowhood any more. For thy Maker, thy husband, the Lord of hosts, is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the God of the whole earth shall he be called. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken, and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth, when thou wast refused, saith thy God. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid from my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. For this the waters of Noah unto me, for as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with thee. For the mountains shall depart, and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee, neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee. O thou afflicted, tossed with tempest, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors, and lay thy foundations with sapphires. And I will make thy windows of agates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy borders of pleasant stones. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. In righteousness shalt thou be established. Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near thee. Behold, they shall surely gather together against thee, not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake. Behold, I have created the smith, that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall revile against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. Well, this is, as we were working backwards, it's the first, even though it was the last, chapter that the Lord directly quoted verbatim, which for one thing, he had those scriptures memorized. They were a part of him that he could declare them like this. So I know some people who do have more than, a handful of scriptures memorized. I know people who have lots and lots of things memorized. And was watching, just on that point, I watched a lecture or two by the same guy who was like an expert at memorizing, and he said, there's nothing different about my brain than your brain. I've just taught my brain certain tools to help me memorize. And part of, he said, you can't forget something unless you get something. And so if you, he talked with this girl who was one of his students, and she said that she hoped that she didn't forget all the stuff for the test. And she said, well, I studied. And he said, well, how did you study? And she said, well, last night I read the chapter. And he was like, I could see already that he was disgusted by her answer. Reading a chapter is not studying a chapter. And I'm sure it just went bloop, bloop, and in one ear and out the other. And so if she could retain it for 5 minutes just for the purpose of the test, then that's really not retaining it. But what he did say that I thought was of great interest, and if I can remember his name, I'll share it with you. But he said that it has to have relevance and meaning to you, which, when you think about it, how many people have scores and scores of sports stats memorized? They know which game, they know everything about the sports thing. Or people who know, that I can do this, where there's certain songs that every single thing about the song, even the way that they certain breaths they take, and certain everything, you have the nuance down, so that when it's blasting on the radio you can sing along with it, including little all the little nuances. Also, Princess Bride movies. I got a whole movie memorized. How many other movies or skits from Saturday Night Live or other things do I have completely memorized because I found them delightful? Well, obviously, the Lord found Isaiah delightful. As we heard yesterday, he says, for great are the words of Isaiah, so much so that it is committed to memory. Now, of course, he's God, and he knows everything. That's something I can't quite wrap my mind around just yet. But you think about how, if it's important to you, you find ways to memorize it. And he did that with this. And I think that's a great example for us, that we can commit to memory certain scriptures so that really they're just a part of us. In fact, this morning I was watching the little BYU roundtable with this chapter segment from 3 Nephi 16 and 20 through 22. And there were a few examples of people quoting scriptures without having turned to them. They just say, oh yes, in Doctrine and Covenants section, blah, blah, blah. And I remember being in the presence of another woman who did that, where my family was traveling in Idlewild, and that we were there on a Sunday, so we sought out the church, which, I always do that when I travel. And the person who was supposed to give the talk in Sacrament didn't show up, or, for some reason they didn't show up. And so they just right there on the spot called a woman out of the congregation and asked her to give a talk. And look how many years that's been. That was probably 20 years ago, and it still impressed me how well she knew her scriptures. She loved them, and she quoted them, and she did hold them in her hands and cradled them like they were sacred and special to her. And I thought that was awesome. And it was a great example to me that what do we cradle? What do we love? What do we treat with honor and give our time and our money, our most precious of resources, to commit to memory, to spend the time that what we call maybe our discretionary time. What is it we do? Do we embrace and love the scriptures? We know those are the things that are eternal. So just that one little thing to start. Then when I'm looking at the bigger picture of this, it's Isaiah, okay? And the beauty of Isaiah, and also the intimidation of Isaiah, can be right here, how he talks about, he uses a lot of imagery, and he talks in here about the travailing with child and enlarging the place of thy tent, And this talks about okay, let me read this one little thing before I continue on. Okay, in Treasures from the Book of Mormon by W. Cleon Skousen. Yesterday we talked about the importance of writing things down and how awesome it is that he wrote these things down. But just this one section I want to share with you, and then I have another thing I want to also share. Okay, Jesus quoted verbatim the 54th chapter of Isaiah. This is a song of victory to be sung when the Lord's program of assembling Israel in the latter days has been triumphantly achieved. Note that it deals with much of the material we have just covered: the land of America, the gathering of the lost tribes. Of course, he's referring to chapter 21, which we'll talk about tomorrow. The building up of the new Jerusalem, and the leisurely gathering of the tribes of Israel back to Palestine. Without the Book of Mormon and modern revelation, it would be difficult to appreciate what Isaiah is talking about. He talks about Israel beginning to gather together, the children of the desolate being more than the children of the married wife. This might mean that the returning of the lost tribes will greatly outnumber the members of the church in Zion. Of course, he's not saying for sure, he's just saying it might mean that. And then when that happens, he goes on to say for the verse 2 that of course the enlarging the stakes of the tents will go on. And it's interesting, this actual word, the stakes, because if you think about a tent, and if you've ever gone camping, you take that little stake thing and you pound it into the ground, and then on the other side you pull really as hard as you can, and you make it so that it stays taut and you get as much room in that tent as possible. And so it's saying here, lengthen the cords, strengthen thy stakes. Well, yesterday on my Facebook page, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I reposted this video that was posted from, I think it was the Mormon channel on YouTube, and I played that before several years ago in one of my seminary classes, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're uploading the seminary videos, which they used to just be forbidden, that you can only show them in seminary. But this was started with a map of the United States, and they showed the very first stake. And then it was a time-lapse video, and the little year on the bottom, starting from 1830, I think, and it brings it all the way almost to today. I think it ended in 2008 or 9, I can't remember. But after like 1961, this music is going, and it's swelling, and these little lights on this map show up every time there's a new stake there, a new stake here, a new stake there, until finally at 1961 it pulls back like Google Maps does, and you see a larger picture. You see the world view, and then boom, 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 stakes are popping up all over the place, which is totally a fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel 2 that the stone will come forth, and you can't stop it. Now, interestingly enough, that they talk about, they also use the imagery of a woman having a child. And another interesting thing, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I also posted on my personal Facebook page, and maybe I'll put it on my other one. It's a picture of a baby inside the amniotic sac. And I don't know how they got it, but it didn't break. And this whole, the whole sac that the baby's in is completely intact, and it's not even breathing oxygen yet. And you look at it and you absolutely marvel, absolutely marvel at what is going on. So we got a picture of this. It's an actual photograph of a baby inside the sac, and you can tell it's completely cramped. And when the baby is inside a mother, as I've had children myself, believe me, there is no care for what's happening with the mother. They make room, they come, and they're there to stay, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they just force their way, and they need more and more room. Well, that plus this video that is going on, talks about how the imagery of the church growing, that's what this is talking about, where possibly the lost tribes of Israel will be joining the church in droves, that there's they have to be dealt with. There's so many. Plus, if you think about the lowering of the age of the missionaries that we just had, and how thousands are joining the missionary field, also incredible. Well, listen to this too, where I found this when I did Google for my 3rd Nephi 22 from the Neil A. Maxwell Institute. It says, okay, I love the Neil A. Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship. Redeeming the Desolate Woman, the message of 3rd Nephi 22 and Isaiah 54. Just want to read this first part here. The risen Jesus quotes the 54th chapter of Isaiah, which addresses a desolate woman who will be redeemed in the latter days. Then it goes on to say, Zion often represents the celestial city of God and the stakes of the church as the kingdom of God on earth. Throughout the scriptures, Zion refers to a covenant community of temple-worthy saints, such as the happy people who lived the law of consecration in the New Testament and in the Book of Mormon. However, the faith of Zion must be proven in every generation. Zion receives a fullness of joy only after a time of loneliness, just as the spirit children of God receive eternal life only after they are tested by pain and death in mortality. Zion enters the presence of the Lord only after a period of hardship, just as the more righteous part of the Nephites see the face of Jesus only after they have survived the destruction of the wicked in tempests, whirlwinds, earthquakes, and other disasters. Then Zion's portrayed as being desolate in spite of the Lord's covenant that she will find joy as a wife and mother in the promised land. Zion is desolate because 1, she has no children, 2, she has no permanent home or resting place, 3, her husband seems to have forsaken her, and 4, adversaries are trying to destroy her. The Lord promises to redeem Zion from such desolation by establishing a temple in her midst. The light of the temple will overpower the efforts of her enemies. The temple will gather the children of Israel. And then he goes on to talk about that. Then it expounds a little bit more. This is the beauty of having at our fingertips the brilliance of people who have studied all these things, including myself, that I am so grateful that I have studied these things. But even so, reading someone else's words gives me another little something in my head to mix with what is going on, with my eyes being open to the news and everything. The tent figuratively represents the priesthood organization of the church in Zion. The images of enlarging and stretching suggest the preparations in a woman's body for the birth of a child. The lengthened and strengthened cords and stakes represent the growth of the church. Furthermore, the Lord transforms the portable tent of Zion into a permanent temple, just as he transforms the temporal tabernacle of our mortal bodies into perfect temples of immortal glory in the resurrection. The tent is thus a metaphor for the Lord's covenant with Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Children from all nations, kindreds, tongues, and peoples will eventually have the opportunity to dwell in the haven of gospel covenants in the latter days, and will not forever remain desolate and barren. Pretty awesome stuff there. One more thing that I think is probably one of the most famous scriptures out of this is the scripture about the children. Okay, here it is. Enlarge the place of thy tent for a small moment. Where is that? Oh, here it is. Number 13. Verse 13. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. Children have come center stage in even politics these days, as they're being almost used as a decoration for implementing policies that limit our freedoms. And children were at the heart of the horror and the terror of the Sandy Hook massacre, at the right there smack when they were in school, and they were used as props to sign gun control into law. And can you imagine how terrified kids, if they saw that, even those kids, or especially those kids who went to school there, going back at that school, how terrified they must have been. So teaching the gospel to children so that they understand the plan, I would imagine would give great peace to them. I think that's really, really significant. That I don't think, that it's too young to teach children about the peace that the gospel brings. Because we are clearly gathering more and more experiences where we have so much terror that we've experienced with all of these natural things, and then with the wickedness of man also coming upon us. It also talks about Israel and the covenant with Israel. And the other thing that I think is pretty significant is it says that no weapon will stand against it. And the people who are in Israel right now, they have been targeted forever. I mean, and they will be forever until Christ comes again to be there and to be the one who's in charge, and that all the wickedness will be swept off the face of the earth, as has been foretold in prophecy. I just think about what the Egyptian president said. Was it the president? Mohammed Morsi talked about them being like pigs or whatever, and they want to wipe them off the face of the earth. And people they're just like rabid dogs when it comes to their hatred of these people. And this isn't, back in the day. This is today. Today they still feel this. And for people to discredit or dismiss the importance of faith and religion with regards to world events, policies, and politics is to dismiss the whole veracity of the scriptures and of prophecy and the things that have been foretold. This chapter, above anything, lets me know that, okay, number one, the Lord's program is going forth no matter what. You can't do anything to stop the Lord's program. That's one thing. Number two, He loves His people. There are two groups of people that are discussed, the Gentiles and the Jews, and basically this talks about it doesn't matter whether you were born into it or whether you're adopted into it, that if you keep the commandments and you honor the covenants, that you are a part of God's kingdom. The other part that I think is fantastic to consider with regards to Jesus Christ and His love and His kindness, that's the main thing, is that yes, we know we're being tested now, and He hasn't forsaken us, but that we have to go through this period of testing and of pain. And I think that's partly so that we appreciate the joy and the beauty of it afterwards. You think about a baby, and when he's using that imagery, and the trouble and the pain that a woman goes through, the travail, the stretch marks, the sleepless nights, the pain, the weakness in your bones as they're moving and stretching, the draw on your bones if you don't take all your prenatal vitamins and everything. It's treacherous what happens to a woman's body. But then after all of that, all those sleepless nights and the discomfort, she gets this beautiful baby, and she just loves it forever and forever. So that's the love part makes the journey part worth it. So of that, I think that's the most exciting part of it all, is that, oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say too, which is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific location. That Zion is not, as they will talk about maybe the key kingdom, where they talk about Independence, Missouri. I've heard that being a prophecy. But that Elder Holland gave a talk about that it is not, we're not going to be pushed out and keep, running from persecution. We're here where we are, and we're here to stay. And according to that map that I referenced, we're all over the world. And so that wherever you are, your community is the place where you can have the priesthood, you can have God's love, and that wherever you are, you don't have to move to be a participant in Zion. And that's that last point that I wanted to make. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow with 3 Nephi 21.